It's got lights in it.
Yeah, the real Titanic wouldn't fit in this room.
Yeah, wouldn't fit in this room.
No, crush it.
That's it, guys.
Probably about half of it fits.
This is a quarter.
This is a fifth.
I wonder if they got an iceberg.
Get the iceberg. They used to.
Yeah, they used to put the styrene.
Get the iceberg so you can sink it.
They don't really sink. It's made of polystyrene. They made
Maybe it was a submarine.
Well, they use really a submarine underneath the boat around. You control the submarine to make it go.
Yeah, maybe it was a submarine. Put the iceberg. So when it hits the iceberg, it dives.
It just sits there. Too big. It would break the second it dies, wouldn't it?
Are you sure that's not going to...
Right, thank you for being patient, ladies and gentlemen. Well done to all the boys and girls that had a go. I think they all did very, very well indeed. They were all very patient and waited very, very much. Super duper. Right, we're now going to go to the first of our proper demonstrations of the day. As you can see, we've now managed to get the very large scale model of the Titanic onto the water. And I'd just like to quickly say thank you to the skipper of the little tug that we've got on the water as well, because we need that to help turn the Titanic around at the end of the pool. So I'll just let them get it underway, and then we'll give you a little bit of history about the Titanic. Right, what I'd like you to do now, boys and girls and mums and dads, is cast your minds back, which most of you probably can't do, to 1907. Because that was the year when a gentleman whose name was J. Bruce Ismay, who was the president of the White Star Line, and Lord Peary, the chairman of that famous shipbuilders, Harland and Wolff, got together and decided to build 3 very large ocean-going liners to ply the trade across the North Atlantic route. The liners were to be known as the Olympic, the Titanic, and the Gigantic. And of course, on the water at the moment, we have the Titanic. Very distinguishable by its 4 chimneys. Although, interestingly, for those of you who don't know the history of the Titanic, only 3 of the chimneys worked for real. The 4th one, the one nearest to the stern of the boat, was only there for show, to make the boat look more magnificent, and it already was. When it was built, it was reputed to be, and no one's ever told me differently, the largest man-made object ever. Over 30 million rivets, I believe, were used in its construction. It weighed in excess of 46,000 tons. And young lads around the pool, you'll be interested to know the full-size ship was longer than 3 full-size football pitches. Her maiden voyage was on a Saturday when it left from Southampton, and it was destined to go to New York, having previously gone to France and also to a port in Ireland. Now we'll just let Richard and his tug skipper there bring it down to the other end, and then we'll tell you what very sadly happened as it went across the North Atlantic. The captain of the ship was Edward J. Smith, and on board as it went across the Atlantic were a total of 2,201 passengers and crew. Now, as Titanic comes down this end of the pool, what I want you to imagine, we've left Queenstown in Ireland. We're probably about 2 days out at sea across the North Atlantic. Remember, this was before the days of sat-nav and GPS, when the radio operator received a Morse code message saying that unusually for the time of year, there were icebergs in the top of the area where the boat was cruising. Captain J. Smith was quite surprised by this radio message. He had never encountered icebergs in that area before, so he commanded the ship to maintain its course. And remember, all the publicity surrounding the Titanic was that this boat was totally unsinkable. So we've gone 11:30 in the evening. People have been dancing in all the luxurious areas of the boat, dining in the fine restaurants, and enjoying many a fine glass of wine. At 11:39, a call came down from one of the lookouts that said, "Danger, iceberg, dead ahead."
Ladies and gentlemen, at 12:30 today, the cinema will be showing a film on No Trolleys to Aquarium. That's at 12:30 in the cinema located on level 2, room 5 at the north end of the building.
And there you heard that mournful cry of the ship's foghorn. As 11:40 p.m. it struck the iceberg. The iceberg ripped a great gash in the side of the ship. Water came in, and despite all the publicity of the Titanic being unsinkable, the water started to come over one of the bulkheads in the bow of the ship, progressed into the second chamber, over that bulkhead, and slowly she started to sink beneath the waves, fell first. She was a long way out at sea. The nearest vessel to her at the time was some 58 miles away, and that was a ship known as the Carpathia. And they sent out a distress message to the Carpathia, but of course it was going to take the Carpathia many hours to get to the location of the Titanic. It was totally pitch dark, there was no moonlight at all, they were over 1,000 miles from the nearest land, the water temperature was just about 1 degree above freezing. And they rapidly learned that there were insufficient lifeboats on the Titanic to get all of the crew off. And slowly but surely, stern first, she sank beneath the waves. And at 2:20 a.m. in those freezing conditions, in total darkness, the Titanic slipped beneath the waves. It's very chilling to remember, ladies and gentlemen, of the 2,201 people on board, only 711 were actually rescued. Now the Carpathia arrived on scene several hours later and managed to get people out of the lifeboats, and of course those people that had been in the water, with a water temperature that low, your chances of survival were probably 10 to 30 minutes at the most. Hypothermia would set in, and it's a very unpleasant way to end your days. If you're not familiar with the history of the Titanic, boys and girls, here's a little bit of important information for you, because it's quite hard to imagine this. Where the Titanic sank, the ocean is 2.5 miles deep. Now the model you've been watching has been built by my friend Richard Slater over there in the corner. As you can see, it's a very large model. It's built to a scale of 1/72nd scale, so it's a good job he didn't build it to a bigger scale, otherwise it'd be more than the length of the pool. Here's an interesting fact for you, in case you're unaware of this. currently a very wealthy Australian businessman is having a full-size replica of the Titanic being built in a Chinese shipyard. So we all expect that sometime in the next 2 to 3 years there will be a brand new Titanic sailing the world's oceans. And I'm told reliably that wealthy Americans have already paid vast sums of money to be on the first sailing of the new Titanic, which will of course go from Southampton and follow the route of the original Titanic across the North Atlantic to New York. Of course, they will have the benefit of modern VHF and UHF radio communication, sat-nav and GPS. So the likelihood of the new Titanic hitting an iceberg is very, very remote indeed. Right, boys and girls, Richard's over in the corner, very proud of his large model. I think a little round of applause is what he'd like to hear.